The first and maybe last annual research conference of the third decade. A conference on research on the John F. Kennedy assassination. I'd like to begin by asking the President of Fredonia State College, Dr. Donald McPhee, to, on behalf of the college, to welcome you to the campus.
Thank you. I suspect that's because the room is cool. This is the room our faculty council meets in, and I very rarely get applause in this room. It's nice, right, Jerry? One of my first recollections when I arrived at Fredonia some 6 years ago, Jerry Rose paying me a call, and I remember the visit was unique because Jerry didn't have a long agenda of things that he that could instantly change the campus for the better, as was often the case with my visitors in those days. Jerry, on the other hand, came with a copy of the third decade, and has been sending those copies, and they've been read ever since. And I know, I see at the end of your program you're going to decide whether you go for a fourth decade or not. History is full of anomalies. Maybe you ought to stay with the third decade and keep publishing, and everyone will wonder what it's all about.
Wondering that for 8 years.
That's not a form of emotion, Jerry. The wounds are easily opened. As I reopened, as I thought about this morning, I recall that I was in the Greek Theater on the Berkeley campus in spring. I think it was March or April, 1963, and heard President Kennedy deliver the Charter Day address. I can recall those events. Our generation, particularly my generation, witnessed, called trying to explain to our three very young children why we were mourning and why we were glued, my wife and I, to the television set when they thought cartoons should be viewed and didn't understand. Sometimes undergraduates today take about that same amount of coaxing to understand the importance of those events. All more important for groups like yours to keep at historical accuracy. I remember trying to explain to a group of undergraduates when we resumed classes at San Francisco State a couple of days later, search for some way to give some meaning and some context, as some of you probably did in those days. Historical accuracy is always clouded, particularly when high emotion is involved, when government secrecy is involved, when public figures are involved. So I applaud you for your work, and we do welcome you to Fredonia. Hope you have a good stay, despite a bit of humidity this time of the year. It's not as bad as Washington, D.C. if you do research there in the summer. Pleasant campus. I hope you look around this area and the village and Chautauqua Institution if you have any time. Welcome, and we wish you well. I need to go out now and welcome a new group of undergraduates who are having their orientation over in another building. I'd like to stay. I'm going to take the outline of the talk along and peruse that. Thank you for being at Fredonia. Thank you.
I think nearly everyone here was with us last night as we sweated through an evening at Chautauqua Hall. So I probably don't need to say a great deal about the conference itself in terms of its format. I think everybody understands basically that we're going to have presentations. In most instances, there will be written papers that will be available. In the case of in this morning's instance, at this time only the Cutler paper is available in written form. And Bob does want you to have the paper at hand as he talks. And as he says, turns pages with you on the paper. We will, in each instance, have an assigned discussant who will make about a 10-minute or less presentation, one person's reaction to the paper, and then all the papers, all the presentations are open for discussion from the floor. Based on last night and based on years of involvement with people involved in this work, we could go on forever in terms of any one of these topics. We won't go on forever. We'll have an absolute 1-hour limit for any one presentation and discussion, and then you have the rest of the weekend, the rest of your lives, or whatever, to continue the discussion. But I'll be the ogre that keeps the time. I hope that what we will do today and tomorrow will be in the spirit of a common concern for a topic in which what we share is balanced by the differences that we have in viewpoints about this topic. We can be as adamant and as contentious even as we like or as we need to be in expressing our viewpoints. But what I hope we can all come back to at the end or as we proceed is this sense that we are in a common enterprise, and we're not here to put one another down or to put other viewpoints down, but to learn and to try to understand more than we've begun to understand in the third decade about this topic that we find so interesting. Those are your words of wisdom from your convener, I hope. Please feel free. We're not going to take a break per se during this first session. Feel free to take your own break. There's a coffee machine and other machines outside. No problem with bringing food and drink inside here. And bathrooms are, I was going to say you could go to the president's office and use his, but he's gone, so that joke would fall flat. But the restrooms are directly across from the president's office, as a matter of fact, if you go around to the left. The nearest men's room is at a rail, that ramp. There's a couple of steps that go down into the faculty lounge, and there's a men's room there. If you don't like going down a couple of steps, you can go down the hallway nearer to the end, and on the left is a men's room. The women's room is simply down by the exit sign, more easily described. So feel free to come and go as you feel you need to come and go. Except when Bob Cutler's reaching the climax of his presentation, don't go. Or anybody else. All right. To begin this, one other detail. The session, largely by popular request of people that are here and people that aren't here but would like to be here, we are having the sessions, the paper presentation sessions, and also this evening's address by John Davis, videotaped by a very good video technician associated with the college, Eddie Ruggiero. And as I said last night, if any presenter or anyone who's commenting on the presentations has any kind of problem with having their comments where the presentation is videotaped, a friendly word to Eddie, and it'll turn off. So I hope no one feels constrained. I don't, it's not the general experience that people feel restrained anyway in this group. But if you do, feel free to let us know. Otherwise, this will all be taped in living color. Yeah, living color. If someone delivers a headshot, they'll have it recorded. Not the Zapruder film, but the Ruggiero film. All right, this time I have the pleasure of introducing a person that with whom I've had a long and friendly and occasionally contentious relationship, not personally, but we've disagreed on a point or two at times, but that's the nature of the beast, and I feel that a very valued friend and a very important contributor to the knowledge in this field is going to lead us off with a bang in this convention. Bob has told me that he may not confine all of his remarks to well, he's going to say what he's going to say on that. At this time, Robert Keller.
Thank you. I'm not used to using the first person singular because I just don't like to do that. However, this whole piece that you have, I hope some of you have in front of you, called The Search and Discovery of the Single Shot to the President's Head. It's best to put that in a very personal way of doing it so that I get this point across, because if anybody goes out of this room not believing what you will just read and hear, then I have failed, because there is no way that there was more than one shot to the President's head. And behind me, you must think of Galileo and Sir Isaac Newton. That's my team, right here behind me. All right, I assume you all have this so that we can follow along. I'm just going to zip through, because that's the best way I know how to present it. The reason I put position in the very beginning in Freedonia at 42.25, 42.25 and 72 by 25, on planet Earth, tip 21.5 degrees to the orbital plane, making it warmer here today than in December. We're spinning counterclockwise in Earth. As Earth orbits the sun, a star revolving around the center of the Milky Way galaxy at a radius of about 1,500 light years, as that conglomeration cruises towards the constellation Hercules. I want you to all be sure you know where you're going, so that you can concentrate on what is before you, and not worry about all the things that everybody, each one of us has all kinds of things that they worry about, and they want to present them to somebody else. I've got this opportunity now, you have your turn later. But I want you to be sure you know where we are, what we're doing. 27 years ago, 7 months and 7 days ago, at half-afternoon today, Abraham Zapruder, standing on the concrete retaining wall of Dealey Plaza, filmed the assassination of President John Kennedy. We all know that. Interpretations of that film have proliferated. Spinning in space and looking backward in time, we seize this moment to understand 5 frames of the Zapruder's masterpiece. 312, 313, 314, 315, and 316. These 5 show the unseen forward motion of the head, as well as the reversal to the visible backward motion seen in the film as a movie. Just consider that. That's all we're talking about. 5 Zapruder films. Now, obviously, other rifles on page, 3. In this diagram, the editorial of the Midlothian Mirror in 1966, by, and I say with all sincerity and all love, my friend, Penn Jones. because I went down to Midlothian. I know him well, and unfortunately, as you probably realize, he has been subjected to somewhat to Alzheimer's, and that's why he is not as active as he is today. I went down there a little while ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, and he just hit him on a day when everything was just right. I mean, we went right back. He remembered all the things. He was laughing. He was just the same Ken Jones that I knew in 1967, 8, 9, 70, back in there. And it's marvelous to be able to take what I did for the book called The Umbrella Man, of course. I took these statements. This was only a statement, and I made the drawing here so that we could see. You begin to get the pattern of the crossfire that we're talking about. You look at shots number 4 and 5. That's the only one you should look at. And you notice that he has a dotted line from the roof of the records building. He has those 2 shots to the head. They express the gut feeling reaction of all the early Warren Report critics. He put it right in the mirror. And he also, it's in FMG 1, 2, or 3, 4. I can't remember where they all are. But he made the statement that all the early critics, and you begin to name them, take them off. I won't bother to do that. You know who they all are. All of those people agreed that this was the general way in which they considered at that time, we're talking 66, 67, was the solution to the headshot. And we're only talking the headshot this morning. Anytime you want to go into all the other shots, that's a whole nother, I can stay here forever. Don't do it. 6 Seconds in Dallas, on the next page, is Ting Thompson, of course, as you know. And it was in 65 that Ting Thompson and Vince Alandria, using 2 National Archives slide projectors and a single screen, discovered both the forward and the backward motions of the president's head. Knowing the former was caused by a bullet fired from behind, from the TSB, behind the limousine, they naturally assumed a bullet from the grassy knoll caused the backward motion. Consider yourself as Ting Thompson and Vince Landry at that time, and you're in the National Archives, and you're doing this, and you see blink, blink, and the head goes forward, the head goes back. You can see, you know that your whole being would be, my God, there's a shot from the front. It has to be a shot from the front. Look at the one from behind. It makes the head go forward, and you've got to have a shot. It is absolutely perfectly normal. And many, many of you, including myself, agreed with that because we never thought otherwise at that time. There was no reason to think otherwise. Crossfire 70, when Dick Sprague's crossfire, he called it wasn't called that. This is Computer and Automation, May 1970. In order to, again, putting it into The Umbrella Man, my book, I called it Crossfire 70. Dick Sprague's firing sequence in the 570 issue of Computers and Automation corrected a couple of biblical errors. In other words, as I said before here, immediately skyrocketed to the critic's Bible. 6 Seconds became the Bible. So Dick corrected a couple of biblical errors, but did not disturb the double-shot gospel according to St. Ting. Now that's important to remember, because and Dick Sprague today, if he were here, he'd stand up and say, "You're wrong, Cutler." He and I have agreed many years ago, it must have been about 1971 or 2, to not talk about the shots to the head. So I went one way, and Dick has gone the other way. As you know, he sort of retired out of this whole business, but he's still here in this country. I haven't been in touch. Yes, he wrote me a letter a month or so ago. So there we have the 2 shots to the head. There is the basis for it. And it's 1966, 67, 8, 9, and 70. And you get that married into your brain, and it's very hard to get it out. I don't know that I should take any questions, really. I think it'd be better if I went through this whole thing, if you don't mind. Crossfire 72. Because this firing sequence violated the gospel by omitting a second shot to the head, Computers and Automation rejected this 9th anniversary article in toto. I had written, Ed Berkeley asked me to write an article for the Computers and Automation for 1972, the 9th anniversary. I went through the whole process. I had Every single shot was all very carefully detailed, all written up, the whole thing. It never saw the light of day, simply because I had violated the single thing that was paramount in those days. You couldn't publish anything that didn't have 2 shots to the head. It would be heresy. You must understand that, because if you do understand that, then you get the full flow of the information as it comes to you. It so happened that in that year, 71 and 72, I had begun to be upset about this matter. And 4 years later, still unable to explain how one bullet alone could cause the head's double motion, I diagrammed my dilemma. And I'm in a dilemma. This is page 7, the headshot and SRT. SRT is the second rifle theory. The diagram on the left shows the first shot through the top of the head from the TSBD, exactly as Thompson and Salandria and all of us have agreed, and all of you will agree, there is one shot through the president's head. I can't see how I can find any disagreement with that. It comes from behind. There is no question in anybody, there should be no question in anybody's mind that there is one shot fired from somewhere up behind. I'll say window 14 from the TSBD, you say whatever you want to say. But there's one shot from behind that goes through the top of the president's head.
What is the evidence?
Right shows the second shot, which lacking both an entrance and an exit wound, must propel the head backward, not across the limousine. In other words, that diagram, what I tried to do was to show that a shot coming to the head, looking at the president's head at 312, which you have right there, a shot has to come directly from the grassy knoll, ahead of the limousine, and go into his head here and come out. It does not come out. There is no damage to this side of the head. I think most people will agree to that. There are 1, 2, 3, I think there are 4 small dots up in here. There's a little crack that goes over and gets into the left side. But most of it, as you know, most of the damage is right here. And that's important, must propel the head backward, not across the limousine. If you imagine a shot coming to this side of your head and not entering, let's say it does exit here, your head is going to go this way. It is not going to go this way. In other words, you can't have a shot come from here and expect your head to go at 90 degrees to the flight path of that bullet. I don't think any of you would believe that that would be possible. And it just seemed so impossible to me. I did not have the solution. And this is 70, whatever it is, 76 or something like that. Yeah, all right. On page 8 and 9, those two are very important. This is the ITEC report in 76. Of its film research for CBS's 1976 TV documentary was a giant step for the single shot to the president's head. This sketch shows that a bullet hit between 312 and 313 and moved the head forward 2.3 inches. The dimension has been added to the sketch that I traced from the report. This is the motion no one sees when the film is in the movie. This is most important. The bullet actually hit between 312 and 313. That means that in about, well, it could be a 36th of a second, or if it hit, it could be a 64th, it's less than a 36th of a second. The head moves 2.3 inches forward. You can never see that on film. When you look at the Zapruder film, that's why so many people saw the Zapruder film. The only thing that they saw was the backward motion. They never saw the forward motion. Therefore, everybody said, there must be a shot from the front. It's perfectly normal and absolutely natural to so assume. And I was one of those people for many years. The dimension and the 314, 315 position lines have been added to ITAC's sketch, illustrating the backward movement of the same 2.3 inches. I'm on page 9. The report also states, states, no physical evidence of a bullet having caused the backward motion was found. To me, that was the end of my search right there. I knew that I had somebody, so I went right out to talk to the guys at ITAC. ITAC was about 10 to 15 miles from where I lived. So I became very friendly with Fran Corbett, was the head photographic researcher there, and I became friendly with the guys that did the work. And it also helped me tremendously in absolutely putting the Connolly shot at 223. Those guys did a marvelous job of doing certain things. And this, of course, was very, very helpful to me. The contradiction of the gospel according to just about everyone was met with silence and or derision from just about everyone. It really, I mean, the ITAC report, most people said, oh, but you know, ITAC's government contractor, and of course they screw everything up as far as we're concerned. They're just, they're controlled by those people who control everything. No, that is not so. When you meet the men that did the work and did it as scientists for CBS's documentary, then you begin to understand that they acted as scientists, and they were not controlled by somebody on the inner belt feeding money into the corporation. So on page 10. I don't remember why I happened to turn to the right pages in the dictionary. I do recall laughing. The third law of motion had been neglected by just about everyone, including myself. With the help of Galileo and Sir Isaac, the single shot to the president's head corrected the gospel according to St. Tink. I was at, obviously, the gospel according to St. Tink was what you all knew. I was alone in left field with my thoughts about the single shot to the president's head. Believe me, I have been for years. I'm very accustomed to it. I'm hoping I can get a few converts today. This whole page here came out in, I think it's 1977, so 78. This is a page from 76 Seconds in Dealey Plaza. And I just, along with, let's say, finding out what the umbrella man was doing, I had this information, so I put it right through. I'm not going to read all through that. You can see what it is. At 312, the head goes forward. At 313 to 313, it explodes at 313, and then we go backwards. And I used 322 in this particular instance in 1978 when that was done. I throw this one in on page 11. In 1980, the New York Times interpreted HSCA's solution to the assassination of the president. The evidence the staff provided the committee ignored the wounded innocent bystander. Of course, tag had to be inserted in the only available spot. I mean, this thing came out without that man standing on top of the records building, of course, of the jail. I added that. I had to, you know, I mean, if somebody ignores completely, it's a small wound it is on its cheek, but it caused the Warren Commission, as you know, a lot of problems. So you had to put tag somewhere. The Times suggested a fine of $500 for disseminating copyrighted material. Noting fair use of less than 500 words, my patent attorney set me free. Fortunately, no Times man remembers old Chinese proverb, one picture worth 10,000 words. So, I mean, I just throw that in because I think it was incredible that anybody could come up with anything like that. If you know Elm Street well enough, you'll know that the position of the position of the limousine at that point is about somewhere around 370. It's nowhere near 313. If you go back and see the wall, the trees, as you can see back a few pages, I've been at this for a long time. So immediately the whole thing is just a farce, just exactly as the HSCA was. It's typical. Badge man shot on page 12. Jack White's 1983 research located a man firing from behind the stockade fence in perfect confirmation of the second rifle theory. Surprisingly, a sketch layout indicated caution. The bullet's chance of clearing the concrete retaining wall was minimum, at least. In other words, if you lay this thing out in plan, and then you lay it out in section, and you put the fellow standing on, as you see, the man is the shooter is standing on the rear of a bumper of a car, and he leans over and tries to aim. I mean, you've still got you go down a little bit. You don't just stand there and do this. You go down a little bit, so every bit down I could get, of course. I did as well as I could to keep him as high as I could, but still, if you use the elevations of the grass and the concrete and the fence and the man, it's very difficult to get the bullet over the wall. So the chances, number one, the chances of that bullet hitting the head are minimal. Take a look at the head. Please note that it is 34 degrees to the left of the travel line. That is probably the most important thing of all. I had it at 48 degrees one time, and Jack White and I were talking one time, and somehow we got talking back and forth about this, and he said, I think your 48 is all wrong. All right, fine. So I looked again, and we decided that about 34 was right. One of the things that the House Select Committee on Assassinations did correctly is they had 33. So I gave them a big hand for getting as close as they did to what I think is correct. So the head is turned 34 degrees to the travel line of the limousine. That means, on the next page, 13. Publishing the eight-shot crossfire in the Grassy Knoll Gazette in 1983 afforded another opportunity to diagram this insistent SRT. You'll notice that the shot number 9, coming from 15 feet from the corner, exactly where Dick Sprague wants it. I've written a book about this too, and it's a play, and somebody in the play says, yes, Dick, that's exactly where it was, and that's where it is, and that's where the HSCA put that man shooting there too, so it's in the right position. You'll notice that if you add up 51 and 34, you'll get 86, which is as close as I want to get to a right angle shot to the head. And if you have a right angle shot to the head, you are going to get something on this side of the head, and you're going to get an action going this way, and you're not going to get an action going right back along as the head did go. It went right back along the flight path of the shot from window 14, Billy Seymour, window 14, 6th floor of the TSBD. Similar to the unseen motion 312, 313, the head's turned position, 34 degrees to the right of the limousine's travel line, is unseen by those blinkered by SRT, the second rifle theory. Once it is clear the shot from the head of the limousine is actually at right angles to the head, no entrance, no exit, and right angle trajectory make it impossible for the second bullet to move the head backward as seen in the photographic evidence. The head moves backwards if you look at the Zapruder film carefully. It moves backwards. Yes, it turns. Why does it turn? Because the bullet hits 1 inch off of the center line. And of course the head spins. And why does it go backwards? Of course, if you ever hit a top spin in a tennis ball, you've seen a foul tip. You know that the head can spin. You can make it spin. Have you ever missed a golf shot? Last page, Crossfire 91, which is in the play that I've written, which is waiting because it's too damn expensive right now to get it published. But it'll be printed sometime. The Crossfire 91 has Z31213, the last shot, number 8. Billy's shot to JFK's head kills him. Inflicts JBC's thigh wound, that's the small wound that the governor got, and scars inside of the windshield. 3 things happen. Those, of course, are fragments of that shot. But there is where, and I've also, you'll notice also that Badge Man shot, which is number 7, is Roscoe White. I put Roscoe White in there. I had him all around, any place you want to put him. Put him up in the down text, put him in either place in the TSBD, But the best place for him seemed to be to put him behind the stockade fence where Jack White has Badge Man. And if Badge Man and Roscoe White can be married, by all means marry them. Until somebody comes along and says, you can't marry him, I'm going to leave him right there. In other words, you suppose something, you impose something on people, and make it up to you guys to say, you're wrong, Cutler. Anytime I'm wrong and can be proven wrong, I'll be happy to say so. I proved myself wrong by having Badge Man, by having Roscoe up in, as the hard evidence man up in Oswald's window. But that didn't work at all. So we shifted him around to where Jack White, and somebody else has been working with Jack on that. I've forgotten who it is. There's somebody who's been working with him. Oh, I guess it was Bob Broden. Yeah, Broden and White. I talked to them one time on the telephone. They were just working on doing this.
Gary Mack.
So, I don't know that Gary has anything to do with this particular. Yes, he has. That's right. Gary had was going to publish something. Was going to bring out whatever it was, cover-ups again. And I hope that he would. I hope he does sometime, because they have all the information. When you have eliminated the impossible, and the impossible is the bullet to the head from the grassy knoll, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. The single shot to the president's head, and the truth shall set you free. Where have you seen that before? That's the end of that. Thank you. Just briefly, because Jerry Rose originally wrote me and said, just a second, and said that I would only do something to do with the president's headshots. He then, on this outline, says the shots that may have killed the president. I want to make clear that there is another shot that may have killed the president. And this time it's Dick Sprague that puts the poison on the flechette. And it is the shot at the entrance wound to the throat, which is just below the Adam's apple and just above the collar line, and it happens at Z188. And that is what Chris Sharrett and Dick Sprague found. And when ITEC made their report, they found an aberration at 190. They didn't know what it was. They couldn't figure out, because they hadn't been asked to solve what they found at 190. They said, oh, well, we won't do anything about that. But it's mentioned in ITEC's report. Again, corroboration of what we had found. I say Dick and Chris and I were very close. And this was back in 75, I guess it was. Yeah, 76 and 77. All those things are important, because the umbrella man is probably, as far as I'm concerned, the most important person that I know. I happen to have met him, and you perhaps know that, just a minute, Harry, you perhaps know that I also PSE tested him, psycho-stress evaluated tested him, because he asked to be tested. He was the one that said, why don't you give me a lie detector test? So I said, well, how about that? He said, don't worry, don't bother about the, what's the word I'm looking for, the thing that the police use all the time. Well, whatever that test is, whatever their lie detector, I can't ever think of that word.
Polygraph.
Polygraph, thanks. Polygraph, the polygraph test. Said, I can beat that. I said, how about PSE? He said, fine. So he did PSE. We asked him 155 questions. Every time he got anywhere close to a question to do with the plaza, the stylus goes.
When did you do that?
So my point is, 79, I think it is. It was right after the House Select Committee got through. So my point is that the throat wound is a wound of entry. And it was caused by the flechette launched by a CIA weapon, which was an umbrella weapon, arranged so that it could launch a missile. And that missile was good up to 100 meters, was accurate up to 100 meters. They had tested it. I talked to Charlie Sensenay, whom I'm sure was the one that developed it, on the telephone, and I asked if I could have a drawing or some kind of sketches, anything like that. He said, I'm afraid that you have to agree with me that this is probably classified material. And I said, I guess I have to give up, Charlie. Thank you very much. And we hung up. Just a minute, because there's a discussion coming. You'll have your time at number 4, as I understand it, Harry. Just a second.
Okay, I would like to call on the discussion now.
Now, I think
And then we can-
yes, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
If you want to come sit with me, then we'll have Nick talk. Nick Barquette.
Who's the discussant?
Nick Barquette. All the discussants' names are on the current schedule.
Are we going to be able to ask questions?
Yes, yes, after his allotted 10 minutes.
Are we ready to go? I wasn't aware that we were going to limit the discussion basically to the headroom, although I do have some pertinent comments to make in regards to that. I have been receiving sporadically materials from Bob Cutler over the years, not in the recent past, but certainly in the 70s, and I do respect his work. I think that most of what he says is accurate. I can certainly concur with the snapping motion of the head. I think physical damage to the limousine, the fragments that were found, the damage to the windshield, the damage to the chrome molding, I think it's all consistent with a shot from the rear. In addition, I happened to be on a business trip in the mid or late 70s, and I had a chance to go to Dealey Plaza, and I walked behind the concrete wall, and I walked behind the picket fence. And it is, as far as I'm concerned, it's a very close call to try and fire a weapon and strike the limousine from back there. I think it's extremely difficult. I also think it's extremely difficult to have two shots strike the head virtually simultaneously. I think that kind of that's a difficult concept. The thing where I really have I have a lot of problems though with the physical evidence as to the injury. I've seen, I think we've all probably seen the photos that were gotten from, I forget the source, maybe FBI man or whoever, that shows the president's head from the front basically intact. That certainly is not what I see when I see the Z film with that violent explosion to the front and matter spraying in a halo. I remember seeing x-rays where the front of the head appears to be missing, which would be consistent with a rearward shot. But then again, I look at that photograph of the president lying on the morgue table, and that doesn't jive either. I also think back to testimony of the various police officers and the physical evidence of a piece of the skull lying on the other side of the street. And I have never plotted it out exactly where this thing was found and how it would line up from a shot from the front. But again, that to me is contradictory to the evidence of one shot only coming from the rear. So those are the basic problems I have. I think the physics, the work that Mr. Cutler has done is good, but the discrepancies that I've mentioned, I simply have not been able to reconcile, and I've been looking into this for many a year. And those are the only comments I have to make in regards to that specific shot. Good. Mr. Cutler.
Could I help you with the discrepancies that you speak of?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Uh,
Again, the discrepancy of the trajectory of material from the head. In the Umbrella Man, I can't tell you what page it is, but as you all know, one of the big things that made people feel that the shot came from the grassy knoll was the fact that, is it Hodges or, no, it's Martin. Hodges and Martin, I think, said that they were covered with blood, and you know, it's a terrible thing and all that kind of thing. But if you go into the testimony, and I think it's Martin that says It was on the left side of my head, the left shoulder, and the left side of the screen, of the motorcycle screen. What that meant was that the material that was projected forward and upward, as ITEC says, came to a point when it couldn't keep going. Gravity does take over. And it came down again, and these guys ran into it, rode into it. The motorcycle officer rode into it, and it hit him on the left side of that. So it's important to remember because it fits perfectly with a shot from here and the head going that way and the material going over that way and coming down again. So that's all I have to say about that particular thing. That's my explanation, in other words.
The picket fence, how high is the picket fence?
Well, as I recall, I'm guessing about 5 feet. I stood behind it.
60 inches inside,
Okay.
and maybe 66 on the outside, on the grassy outside.
I stood on both sides of it. Yeah.
Concerning the physical evidence, what about the Parkland doctors who said that they reported that they had seen a hole in the back of the president's head, and then Robert Grodin's theory that those pictures were doctored and then subsequently released, and the pictures that I saw that Robert Grodin presented, you could clear. He even points out a matte line where you could see visually by eye how the pictures were doctored, were altered. And there are, as I said, doctors who testified to that, to a major hole in the back of the president's skull.
Well, I got to agree with you. That's an area I can't reconcile because all of the testimony that I'm aware of by doctors and nurses indicates a wound to the back of the head. And although when I look at the Zapruder film, I can't see that. Okay, and if for somebody to doctor the Zapruder film that well, I think.
Well, those pictures that I was speaking were autopsy photos.
No, I understand, but if you look at the Z film.
Well, actually, there is one frame. I'm not sure which frame it is, but Bob Grodin says we could see where his hair became disheveled in the back.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. Okay. Eric.
Just 4 quick questions and comments. Bob, where do you place the entry wound on the back of the head? Where exactly, by laying your hand on your head, do you place the large defect, which in your drawings appears to be forward? Could you put your whole palm of your hand on the large?
I can't. I'm not going to measure it.
The large defect.
I'm not going to try and get into a discussion of whether it should be down here or it should be up here. But I feel it is at the top of the head.
That's not confusing.
I don't think there's any question in my mind anyway.
Okay, where's the entry hole?
That's the entry wound I'm speaking of.
Okay.
The entry wound is 1 inch off center, and it's near the top of the head. The bullet went through the head so that
Where's
it...
the large? Your drawing appears to show it here, right?
Right here, and
Could you
here.
put your
It
whole
went
hand
to
on
the
your
top of
head?
the head, so that the spin was almost automatic. The reversal.
Would you please put your hand on your head? Where do you think the large defect is?
Right here. It's right up here. All you've got to do is look at Z313.
When my turn comes.
314.
Did you previously believe that the Umbrella Man had fired the flechette? Had you published that years ago? Had you said that?
That's what you're talking about.
Well, I mean, originally, did you believe that the Umbrella Man had fired the flechette?
Originally, we had the Umbrella Man firing a pellet from an umbrella which had a CO2 handle. And then
You
when
believe that the Umbrella Man had been the one that fired it?
he was the one that caused the throat wound.
And you are aware that President Kennedy didn't die until 30 minutes after the shooting? And my last point is, are you speaking of the jet effect?
I think that he was dead under the DOU, dead at the underpass.
Well,
The doctors
I mean,
say...
you didn't read the
Look,
doctor's reports.
I'm not going to get into a discussion of what constitutes dead. As far as I'm concerned, John Kennedy was killed immediately.
Well, if he'd been with this
Immediately.
instant poison, he conceivably would have stopped breathing, wouldn't
The
he?
poison happened
Okay, are you
If there was
describing to
poison.
us with the headshot, are you describing the jet effect? Is that what your theory is, that he was struck from behind and that he moved forward and so on? Now, the Zapruder film shows no matter going forward in his body. It's going straight up into the air and
There
backwards.
there are about 5 or 6 different things that contribute to the rearward motion of John Kennedy. One of them is Jackie Kennedy's instinctive push away exerted a pressure on the president. How much? We have no way of knowing. But if you read ITEC's report and if you look at the diagrams that they made, that certainly is part of the action. The other part of the action, as Luis Alvarez very clearly showed, was if something is going, it goes into the head and stuff goes out the back, that is going to push the head backward too. In other words, the whole operation of going through the head, that motion has to push the head backward. What the other thing? Well, I don't think the forward motion of the limousine contributed to his rearward motion.
So except for the Flechette, you accept the Warren report as is, as valid? Gunman from
I
behind.
accept the fact that the Warren report didn't know what they were talking about. There is a shot from above and behind the limousine that killed the president. Absolutely.
Well, then you say the headshot.
Peter.
Yeah.
Mr. Cutler, I'd be interested in your comments about, I don't know if you've read, I guess I should stand up. Can everybody hear it? The book that came out in the early 80s, Crime of the Century by Professor Kurtz. I know it hasn't received a lot of positive feedback, but he came up with an interesting theory that Kennedy was also struck at frame 327 from the front, driving him back. And I happened to bring it. He had two frames. He had them on separate pages, and I put them together because you can see it more dramatically. And if you use your push button on your video, if you happen to have a tape of Zapruder film, Kurtz in his book suggests that he was hit from behind at 312, but that at 327, his head moves rapidly. Sorry, I got it backwards. He suggests he was hit from in front at 312, but that at 327, he was hit from behind, driving him rapidly forward. At 335, his head has moved forward quite. I think it works out to something like 100 miles an hour. I forget exactly. And this was well before the car accelerated. Yeah. What do you think of this?
I can't remember what I thought about it. When you review a book and you put it in the Grassy Knoll Gazette, I'm afraid I've forgotten, but I simply have to disagree.
Yeah.
That's the simplest way I have it. And lots of people have different ways of looking at things.
Right.
That's what it's photographic interpretation.
How many of you have watched the Zapruder film beyond 312? But maybe there's some other explanation. But at 327 to 335, which is what, a half a second later, Kennedy's head rapidly moves forward, and that's when a huge hole develops. That's about half a second after the
I
killing
think a lot of that could be the motion of the limousine when Greer maybe accelerated. Got the word.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Interesting enough, I checked the House assassination list of exhibits, and they listed every frame that they analyzed the Zapruder film, and they stopped at about 325, I think it is, and they didn't analyze 327 to 335 at all. Like the frames that Michael Kurtz feels are important, they didn't even look at in the House investigation. Those particular frames aren't listed in exhibits. The Crime of the Century. You've never seen it? You said it. Professor in law.
I'll speak loud. Third law. We invoke that and try to explain the apparent double motion of the thing. And if so, you'll elaborate on that.
Say again. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Okay. You have applied by least third law.
Yes.
Or you brought it into.
I think I have.
What was the relationship with the double motion?
For every action, there is a reaction.
No, I'm aware of the law, but what's your explanation? Are you using the third law to try to explain the double motion?
Yes, for every action. The bullet action makes the head go forward. There has to be a reaction, so the head goes out.
But that's not Newton's third law, sir. Newton's third law says when two bodies interact, force.
That's the second law.
No.
Well, look on my, if you,
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The key word is opposite.
it's right in here, that thing, the thing I spoke to, yeah, there it is, read that.
Well,
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Sorry, but
I have to disagree.
well, all I can say, can I just say my piece? Is that proper explanation, I think, to Newt's law would be that, see, Newt's law comes about because of conservation of momentum. And what it means is, because momentum is transferred from the bullet to the head, right, through the exertion of force, what happens is that the bullet slows down. That's the reaction force. So in other words, the head is driven forwards and the bullet is decelerated, slowed down. That's the action reaction. It's not
As far as I'm concerned, I'm talking only the reaction of the head.
But that's not a direct, that has nothing to do.
If it's not correct, then you and I disagree. I have to leave it at that. There are other people.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
As a matter of procedure, would you identify yourselves when you ask the question? Me?
Tony?
Tony Marsh.
Yourself?
Could you tell me a little bit more about page 12, the badge man shot diagram? Because the copy I have isn't really good enough for me to get the detail. And I'm wondering what some of the numbers mean. For instance, at the top left-hand corner, there are numbers like 434, 426. I got a different one. I got the white one, fortunately. So, I'm wondering what the numbers mean on the 434, 426, 418, on the upper left-hand corner.
Oh. These numbers are the heights above sea level.
Okay.
431, 430, all the way along the section line. And then you get down to where I added up 413.2 plus 42 is 423. Then you get the 423, and therefore at the wall, which is 427, the head's really almost below the wall, if you see what I mean.
What I'm out is at the JFK shot, in the middle of Elm Street, there's a number there, and I'm not sure what it is. What's the elevation for that? Do you remember?
Where?
Right here, 423. The 423.
I don't know what it is.
Elm Street is 413.2. Add 4.2 from the street to the head, 4.2 feet, and you get 4.2. You get 42.40.
Well,
423.2.
the possibility of whether or not the angle would be, enough clearance.
I'm not worried about the angle. I'm just worried about the elevations. You
Well,
draw the thing, and then it comes out.
I can't tell what the number is underneath the JFK. See there, you have great big initials, JFK.
102.
Is that 102?
Look at the top of the page.
I haven't got any numbers up there that I can see.
Where you got 4.413 plus.
Oh.
I'm not sure if that's it.
That number there, that's what the hell is that?
Well,
I don't know what the 102 there is. I can't seem to figure it out.
Let's see if we can work that out later, John.
102, must be 102 feet
okay. But
from.
going back to the...
Yes, it is. That's what it is. Go along AA.
Okay.
And you've got 19, 20-something, and then finally get out to 102. 102 is about 30 yards.
If I can finish my question. Going back to the 434 and you've got 426, is that correct? So, on the upper left-hand corner.
Oh, up in here, yeah.
Yeah. So, is that really a distance of 8 feet that you're talking about?
That's the elevation behind the fence.
Is the fence...
In other words, all these come from a 1900 and... When the hell did they do Lily Plaza? It was a WPA project, and I have a landscape architect.
That's a difference of 8 feet. So you're talking about the height of a volleyball net. Are you saying that he jumped up and tried to make a shot from 8 feet?
He's standing on a bumper.
I'm wondering what the relevance is of the 434. What that has to do with anything.
Just got a bumper a couple of feet up above 426. You see the guy standing on it.
You're saying the shot...
I didn't do the whole car.
No, but you're missing my point. Why is the number 434 used? Are you saying that the shot would have had to come from 8 feet above The ground
You couldn't
level?
have cleared the wall, that's what I'm saying in this drawing.
Yeah, but why 8 feet? Why not 6 feet above or 5 feet above?
Find it 6 feet from there.
Above the ground, above where he was standing.
Well, you have no...
Why did you arrive at
How'd you arrive
434, I
at 8
think is the point he's trying to
But
make.
you have to get a tape measure, and I'll have to stand here, and I'll have to lean over, and you'll have to measure me. I mean, that's a very small part of this whole thing. The point is,
You're talking about the impossibility of there being a shop in this location.
I'm saying it's minimal.
How you derive the numbers. In other words...
Yes, I agree. Okay, well, that's how we derive it. I've got a
Impossible?
landscape architect's drawing, the working drawing of Dealey Plaza when it was built. That's where the figures come from.
I'm wondering what the relevance is of the 8 feet. Are you saying that it would have to be 8 feet in order to get a clearance? What do you mean 8 feet?
Bob, what evidence was
I
there?
suppose, I don't know, because I didn't go any further with that. I don't know how much further you have to. Sure, if you go 8, 10 feet, sure you get clearance. How do you get that?
Whoever said that a gunman was there? I mean, nobody ever placed a gunman there. Where did you get that idea? I mean, after all, where did the acoustics place it?
If the drawing's wrong, I suggest you guys make a drawing. Believe me.
Well, you have the rest of the fence going
No,
up.
I just wanted to be
Toward the
clear about
overpass.
what your idea was.
I arrived at it. Let's put that way. If I'm
I
incorrect,
wanted to know what your idea was exactly. In other words, did you say you assumed that he would be 6 feet above or 8 feet above or 10 feet
no,
above?
I didn't. No, I didn't do that at all. I assumed, I knew 426, and I went out and measured a bumper, and I got 2.3, 2.5 feet, 2.5 feet maybe. Then I added up a guy, and you get 60 inches above that, about 60 inches, or 60 and a half, or 59 and a half. I mean, hell.
So you're saying that this person would have been standing on a bumper, and therefore the gun would have been, the muzzle would have been 8 feet above the
You've got to stand
ground.
above and get over the fence. If you've ever stood behind the fence, you know that, Gary. If you ever stand behind the fence, you know. You're not going to fire this way. You're going to get up and stand there above
If
it.
the fence is 5 feet and the muzzle of the gun is at 8 feet, you have a difference of 3 feet. In other words, the gun would be 3 feet above the fence.
I'm not sure that it'll be 3 feet or only 1 foot. I hadn't got the top
Well,
of
I
the
think
fence.
what he's saying is that behind, there's a different slope behind the fence than the front of the fence, you have a slope down.
Yes, it is.
What I wanted to get at was, where does he place the muzzle of the gun in order for it to be an impossible shot?
If you can see the drawing, there's the muzzle of the gun just above the fence.
So you're saying the muzzle is just above the fence, like 6 feet?
Bob, where you place this gunman, nobody in this case has ever imagined a gunman to be. He's way up the street. He's right next to the pergola there. There was nobody ever had a gunman standing there.
If we want to continue...
He was much farther down toward the overpass.
It needs, it's minimal. I'm sure somebody else has another question. Sarah?
Well, Bill Rudd, my question was what do you think of the Zapruder film as virgin, undoctored, or do you allow a possibility that like 312 and 313 are as actually
I think
happened?
312 and 313, the 5 frames that I'm talking about, I do not feel that they are doctored. I don't think there's... I think if you look at them enough, I think you see a very simple sequence. And in the pages of the 19 or whatever it
How come
is.
there's no damage to the face or the front part of the head?
The film has been, there's a break back. You can see the breaks back around 150 or somewhere around there. Definitely. And everybody's made a lot of it way back in the room, somebody way back.
I read a book written in the early 1980s after a lot of information came out, theorizing that the shots came from the front, and then it also mentions pre-autopsy autopsy. The name of the book was Best Evidence by Thomas Lipton. I just want to know if there's any comment on that book. I don't know if you subscribe to it or not. I was just wondering what the feeling of the book was, and whether or not you believe that's a possibility.
Yeah. I think the body tampering was, I don't agree necessarily with David tampering with the head wound. I do agree with tampering with the throat wound, because that created the difference between an inch tracheostomy and a 3-inch messing around to try and get the flechette out. I think that that was the tampering. I also feel that they took the bullet back out of here. The back shot bullet came, they backed that out. So that hole was there and the bullet was not in there. And substituted the pre-fired carbonell at pre-autopsy, substituted it into the coffin, so Admiral Osborne later on at formal autopsy held it in his hand. And that is what Siebert and O'Neill signed for, and that is CE 399. That's where it came from. That's again, that's a complicated, convoluted way of thinking, but that's the way I finally found out what CE 399 is. It certainly isn't the bullet that was found at Parkland Hospital. Because all you got to go back is to St. Thompson, and you'll see the difference.
You just stated the president's head after the headshot is basically different, totally different from what the war report is reporting in terms of how the head looks. There's a massive damage to the right side of the face.
There is going to be a presentation later this morning that's going to deal, John, more directly with that question. I think Gary's presentation
I kind of...
Should we move on to the next person?
I'm going to call a time.
I'm sorry about hearing this. You're kind of positive because of I just kind of got a little bit. I'm sorry.
We learned a great deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is a man that perhaps few of us know at this point, and most of us know personally or by reputation Bob Cutler. The man who's presenting now is one of the, what I like to think of as the younger generation of researchers. I think Vince Palomero, based on some of the unpublished work of his that I've seen, is somebody that we are going to hear from and we're going to have constructive dialogue with for many years to come. At least that's my hope. And so I'd like at this time to present Vince Palomero.
The basis of my paper is basically, you saw it, basically the Secret Service complicity in the case, as Mr. Cutler knows. He has my paper, and Jerry Rao, he has it. And, that's 90% of my paper, and there's Jerry there. And the other 10% is basically, I'll read you the title, Where's the Brooder to the Smoking Bullet, analysis of this, in the section of Secret Service Agent William Greer, Zapruder film, and what I call a devastating discovery by myself. And due to the logistics of not having a video camera here, or I'm sorry, TV to be able to show this film, this is something that unfortunately I'm not going to be able to formally present here. But I definitely want to make this a part of my presentation afterwards. So informally, I'd like to get together and show this. But it's not going to affect the major portion of my presentation. It's almost, as much as I call it a devastating discovery, it's almost an afterthought to my general paper. So I'd like to when dissecting the many fears and paranoia surrounding the assassination of President Kennedy, based on the many facts and theories of conspiracy involved in the case, perhaps the greatest evidence of complicity that can be substantiated is the actions and the inactions of Secret Service Agent Bill Greer, as established on the Zapruder film. You know, the other films are tantalizing, like the Marie Muchmore film and Orville Nix film. I think that Zapruder film is from the angle and so forth is what we call the primary sources available. But first, a little background is needed. Greer, age 54 at the time of the President's murder, was one of the oldest members of the White House detail, as well as a veteran of the Secret Service since leaving the Roosevelt administration. As an experienced official chauffeur, Greer had the honor of driving Presidents Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy all over the world many times. During the Kennedy administration in particular, Greer was especially in the thick of things, as he drove JFK through tumultuous receptions in Latin America, Ireland, and Germany, just to name a few. And if you're familiar with America Remembers John F. Kennedy and Celebration of Life and Time, I'm sure, well, if you happen to look for him, you'll see Bill Greer a lot of times in the SX-100, the one you see driving the car. And as was customary, the chief of the White House detail, Gerald Benn, sat beside him in the front seat of the presidential limousine, which was usually the specially made 1961 Lincoln Continental, designated by the Secret Service as SX-100 with a license plate number GG300. In addition, the Secret Service follow-up car, a 1955 Cadillac nicknamed the Queen Mary, due to its weight 10,000 pounds, trailed directly behind the presidential limousine, filled with usually alert naval agents, ready to respond to any crisis, even if the crisis was merely the disbursement of a crowd of over-anxious well-wishers who got too close to the president's car. Finally, as was customary, the local police augmented these presidential motorcades by the use of many motorcycle police officers who usually flanked the limousine in good number. However, all this was to change radically during Kennedy's trip to the Lone Star State, namely Dallas. The Houston and San Antonio motorcades went off without incident the day before Dallas, the city to which JFK was warned to avoid by several colleagues, notably Adlai Stevenson, which is a pretty famous warning. Roy Kellerman was substituting for Ben, who, as previously mentioned, normally made these presidential trips, but not in this case. As the Kennedys departed upfield to begin the motorcade to the trademark, JFK had to have felt secure because he was told the greatest security measures ever afforded a president in the history of the Secret Service was set up for Dallas. And perhaps this is why Kennedy told a concerned Congressman Henry Gonzalez, don't worry, Henry, the Secret Service told me they took care of everything. You don't have to worry about it. And Marty Underwood, who was Jerry Bruno's assistant advance agent, and he advanced Kennedy to Houston and Austin, he basically said to Marty, 18 hours before, Marty, you worry about me too much when he heard these rumors. It's another story itself, the rumors that were going around. The greatest security was stripped away at a local and federal level, as we know from maybe our reading in High Treason, Crossfire, and some other books that are just commonly available. Sheriff Deckard told his men to in no way participate in the security of the motorcade. The 112th Military Intelligence Unit at Fort Sam Houston was preparing for duty in Dallas when it received instructions not to report to that city. And Secret Service agents Winston Lawson and Forrest Sorrells being the senior agent in charge in Dallas, assured Special Agent in Charge Kellerman that Dallas was going to be a good program and they were going to be safe there, mapped out the route that Kennedy would take in Dallas. And it was a route that should have continued down Main Street as advertised in Dallas Morning News, and I'm sure there's been conflict about that as well. They made the motorcade route before, but then there was changes made afterwards. But then the newspaper reported Dallas, was the Times Herald, they said he was supposed to continue down Industrial Boulevard to the Trade Mart. So there's a little bit of an open question there, but for some reason it was changed after the 18th, the original time it changed. Finally, several important members of the Secret Service detail, those in immediate security work for the president, proceeded to get drunk the night before Dallas, and these men who violated Secret Service rules and could have been removed from the force were not punished by Secret Service Chief James Rowley. In fact, the thing was more or less covered up. In an official book on, I call it, Death of a President, it was gleaned over. Basically, you can tell it was like, let's give these boys a break, let's don't name names, and let's forget about it. Although they were on the follow-up car, and we'll see what happens there. But with no Secret Service agents stationed in Dallas, no one to check the rooftops, the manholes, the windows, etc., and limited motorcycle distribution and involvement by the local police, security was left up to the men in the cars of the moving motorcade. Clearly, Bill Greer played a pivotal role in this capacity. As the motorcade reached Main Street in the heart of downtown Dallas, it was apparent that the worries were unfounded, in quotations. Kennedy's trip was a stunning success. Only a matter of several minutes and the president would be safely at the trademark. Dallas would be over, so to speak. As the limousine made the right-hand turn onto Houston Street, Texas School Book Depository came into view. Greer was driving at approximately 15, maybe 20 miles an hour. An assassin, let's assume it's audible, but an assassin could have fired directly at that point. However, no shots were fired during this highly advantageous time, and there was an informal discussion yesterday, it's high treason, for example. FBI Director Hoover explained the strange details of the Warren Commission, who were looking for an answer, to say that a tree blocked the assassin's view from this window, when from that view, as you can see in the Hughes film and the Bronson film, there was no tree remotely in this view. As the lead motorcycles made the turn onto Elm Street, Abraham Zapruder began to start filming. And even before the presidential limousine was on the street, a strange thing occurred. One of the lead motorcycle officers, and possibly H.R. Freeman, separated himself from the motorcade in front of the depository. And on the Zapruder film, even one of the officers, when the film slowed down, which is on here, you can see him, he's turning, and he really makes a turn to look. It's not just he's glancing. He's like literally, you can see him going like stretching, because it appears that the motorcycle officer just keeps going down Houston Street. So it's like it just follows right. He goes down, and he's like looking like this, like where the heck is he going, basically. And but the remaining motorcycle officer nods his head to no one on either side of the street that is apparent in the film. Where he does this is exactly where the first shots are fired. And like the officer who headed down Houston Street alone, this could have been a signal of some kind. But obviously, that's subject to interpretation. Finally, the object of Zapruder's affection comes into view. Kennedy's car makes the 120 degrees Secret Service violating left-hand turn onto Elm Street, also in violation of strict Secret Service regulations for the slow speed of the car and the choice of hazardous route. And JFK's final moments of life are captured here as he brushes back his hair and waves to the crowd. As the car approaches the Stemmons Freeway sign, while the Hertz clock atop the depository roof reads 12:30, the initial volley of shots ring out. As Kennedy emerges from behind the sign, his hands move into his throat and he reacts to a shot from the front. Almost simultaneously, he's shot in the back, and Connolly is hit in the back by separate shots from behind, from either the depository or the Dow Tex building. And the roof of the Dallas County Records building cannot be ruled out either. Now, thrust in my paper here, and I just touched on little parts of the Secret Service activity or inactivity. What does Greer do at this time? Okay, he slows the car down even more, and the brake lights are on, the Zapruder and Nix film, and perhaps much more film. That's one I have not studied for this, as evidence. Also, witnesses Mary Moorman, James Elkins, James Leon Simmons, Norman Similis, Charles Brehm, and Hugh Betzner all stated the presidential limousine slowed down and almost completely stopped during the initial, during this crucial period of time, during the first shot or shots. In a sampling of eyewitness testimony, Mary Moorman said when she heard the shots, the car either momentarily stopped or hesitated. Mary Woodward, reporter for the Dallas Morning News. She saw the president's car come to a halt after the first shot. Then, after hearing two more shots close together, the car then sped up. Charles Brehm. It seemed to him that the automobile almost came to a halt after the first shot. Hugh Betzner. I looked down the street after the first shot, and I could see the president's car and another one, and they looked like the cars were stopped. He then stated that he heard at least two more shots fired and saw the impact in the limousine. The motorcade then sped up. And finally, James Simmons. The car stopped or almost stopped. So far, we have evidence of flagrant bad judgment on Colonel Greer's part, a lack of common sense, and most disturbing of all, the breakdown of Secret Service requirements, all in the hands of someone who obviously knew better and was trained to react upon this knowledge. I mean, he's not just like me or you. He's a Secret Service agent, official chauffeur, who's been doing this since the Truman era. He's done this many a times, okay? And the important thing is, in a lot of books, and this is no cut on the books, I'm sure you might have read this before because they always talk about Greer looking back. But we're only at the beginning of the shooting, okay? What is Greer's reaction to all of this? Okay, he looks back at Kennedy, and in fact, so does Mr. and Mrs. Connolly, and so does Roy Kellerman, who suddenly realizes what is going on. This is Kellerman's testimony to the Warren Commission. As I turned my head to the right to view whatever it was, I heard a voice in the back seat, and I firmly believed it was the president saying, "My God, I am hit." And I turned around, and he's got his hands up here like this, indicating both hands up near the head, as you see. It was enough for me to verify that the man was hit. Greer, however, stated that he never caught sight of Kennedy, although he did admit this to FBI agents Siebert and O'Neill, which he later denied to the Warren Commission. Now, returning to the Zapruder film, we can see the car continue to glide slowly down Elm Street. Greer still has his foot on the brakes. There was time to react. The fatal shot had not yet arrived. And if it's possible to give Greer the benefit of the doubt so far, for one, slowing down the car, and two, looking back at Kennedy, the following actions erase that chance forever. For Greer stared back at Kennedy again. See, these books talk about one stare back. They don't talk about the second one. Returning to Roy Kellerman's testimony, he stated, after the time he looked back at JFK, in the same motion, I come right back and grab the speaker and said to the driver, "Let's get out of here, we're hit." and grabbed the mic. I said, Lawson, this is Kellerman, we are hit. Get us to the hospital immediately. Now, in the seconds I just talked, a flurry of shells have come into the car. Now, in direct conflict with that film and with Kellerman's testimony, Greer testified that he turned back forward after this first unwarranted gaze and began to accelerate the car at the same time that Kellerman yelled, get out of here fast. Then he claimed to have heard a third shot. However, perhaps Kellerman's chat with William Manchester comes closest to reality. He stated he ordered Greer to leave the scene and radioed the alarm to Lawson just before the fatal final shot. And this is a quote from Kellerman. Greer then looked in the back of the car. Maybe he didn't believe me. The Zapruder film is conclusive. Kellerman turns to Greer. Greer then turns his head back to the front. Kellerman then puts the radio mic in his left hand up to his face, and then Greer turns back to stare at JFK for the second time until after the fatal shot makes its mark. It's basically a situation where they're going down, okay, and first shot or shots, excluding all this, the controversy with the front or the back, shots rang out. That's that. He looks back. He's a trained Secret Service agent, like I told you before. And, governments are calling it a turn back. That's human nature. I mean, whether it was a breakdown in training, it was this human instinct. They hear a sign, they look back. Even Kellerman looked back. You can see him turn and he's like, he looks back. Now, in this motion, and Kennedy's like this, and there's still a few more seconds for the fatal shot is to come. Kellerman, when he turns back, he pauses for just a moment. And obviously, you can't read lip systems from the other side of the car, so I'm not going to pretend to be a lip reader here. Because according to what Kellerman said and the actions of the film, when he turns back, according to his testimony, he said, get out of here, we've been hit. And then he turns back around. And Greer has turned back around and so has everybody else. Now, and this is in the film, when Kellerman's got his hand back up here with the microphone, which you can see, that's when Bill Greer turns back around and stares at Kennedy again. Obviously, with his foot on the brakes, the car's not going any faster, and then that's where you read in the books where then the fatal shot makes its mark, and only then does he turn around, and only then does he accelerate the car. See, people make it like it was one look back. Okay, and he does it, but there's two looks back. So this mumbo jumbo about, well, it was just a mistake or human instinct, I don't buy that at all. When it went down Street Head, obviously, as we know, Secret Service agent Clint Hill cleaned to the back of SX-100. So you probably know this part about Hill. He was the only agent to react properly in the follow-up car, and he was not originally scheduled to make the Dallas trip, and he came via Mrs. Kennedy's personal request. As for the other agents, including those intoxicated from the trip to the cellar the night before, they did not react, perhaps because the commander of halfback, follow-up car, Emory Roberts, ordered the men not to move. And Agent John Reddy, who was the other man, here's Clint Hill, and here's John Reddy, was in the process of reacting, but he was recalled from Emory Roberts. And here again, people want to be skeptical and say, oh, come on. I mean, what does that show? All it shows is what Emory Roberts said. He said he recognized Oswald's first shot as a shot. Okay, he recognized that shot. Well, what the hell did he do in the next 5 or 6 seconds? Absolutely nothing. And you can even see in the Alkins photo, they're just standing there. And what happened. He recognized the first shot as a shot. Why did he shot? Why didn't he do anything? Even if it would have been in vain, why didn't everybody lunge forward? And now returning to the fatal shot, a few items of interest should be noted. Before the limousine disappears behind a sign, a young girl named Rosemary Willis can be seen running after the presidential limousine, only to stop dead full for no apparent reason. It's like she's running along the car and she stops. But however, according to her testimony, she caught a glimpse of a suspicious man standing behind the corner of the concrete retaining wall on the grassy knoll. He appeared conspicuous and who then disappeared in the next instance. And this is why she stopped and stared over the knoll, where Jim Moore in his book tries to make it like, well, she was looking up at the depository, that's the reason why she stopped. You can see she's looking over in the direction, general area of the retaining wall, waiting for Gola in that direction. And the head of the man and possibly a rifle can be seen during the latter portion of the Zapruder film when Clint Hill's in the trunk as the car passes the knoll and the retaining wall. Now, this has been a topic of much dispute, as I'm sure a lot of people know. Although the House Select Committee said that this person was merely a bystander, I love that one, they forgot one thing. No one was wearing a hat of the kind the bystander is wearing, not Emmett Hudson or nobody else on the stairs, or anyone else either filmed or officially accounted for. Keeping in mind the tantalizing objects in the Mormon photo, including the badge man, the head of a man wearing a hat behind the picket fence. The other part, you see the badge man, who's also a man, and you can see a hat. They always talk about a head. Well, what I see is I see a hat there. And Willis slide number 5, which sort of matches up with the Betzner film, when you see somebody behind the retaining wall. And the photos of the 3 tramps, one of whom is wearing a hat. And this is why I went through all this still photos to substantiate suspicious activities with the man in the hat. And the House Select Committee said this is a bystander, but nobody was wearing a hat that was officially accounted for in official films of people in front of the fence and the retaining wall. So the House Select Committee just overlooked that whole matter to say the bystander, and that's it. And then 5 minutes before the motorcade arrived, at a time when we were scheduled to do so at Houston Street, a young man described as wearing green army fatigues, possibly Latin, suffered a seizure near the front door of the depository, effectively distracting police and bystanders while the assassins moved into position and were brought ready. An ambulance was sent to pick up the man, and an O'Neill Funeral Home ambulance was on standby in case of injury to the president. It was driven by Aubrey Reich and Dennis McGuire, the same men who would later load Kennedy's body into the same ambulance for the return trip to Love Field. Furthermore, once the ambulance carrying the epileptic man arrived at Parkland Hospital, the destination of the mortally wounded president, the man walked off, refusing to be treated or to identify himself. The man's identity, Jerry Belknap, came much later when the FBI investigated the matter, although there was no mention of it in the Warren Commission report, obviously. And the Zapruder film also captures the actions of the Umbrella Man, the only man with an open umbrella on this hot day, as verified by countless pictures and films of Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. The man, along with a dark-complected companion, who raises his hand high into the air, pumps his umbrella up higher where he stood, just past the Stevens Freeway sign, right where the initial shooting takes place. And where I differ with Mr. Cutler is I think that he was more or less just a signal. I don't buy into the cliché, but I do think that he was a signal of some sort, and I think it was suspicious. And I think it would really indict some, as you could say, well, okay, it was a coincidence. He was there, he had an open umbrella, and supposedly, according to the man who identified himself as the Umbrella Man, Louis Stephen Witt, I think it was, House Committee. And basically what he said was it was because Joe Kennedy Sr., it was a symbolic political statement. And he did. Kennedy didn't like these umbrellas. The only thing is that when the initial shooting took place, he didn't back out, he didn't stop his actions. The shooting was going on, the man's still there with the umbrella. It's pretty strange. And now returning to Greer after the shooting, Secret Service Agent Greer will go on to leave the race to Parkland Hospital, as the Jack Daniel film shows, as well as stay behind at the hospital, ostensibly because Kellerman was unwilling to wait for him, while the body of JFK was taken out of Parkland, or was it? This was the only time in the last few days that designated driver Greer did not chauffeur the president. He would later drive the Gray Navy ambulance to Bethesda. Perhaps Greer's role in the conspiracy ties into the work of David Lifton and his body alteration transportation theory. One thing is certain, Greer's testimony cannot be trusted, as has already been shown to some degree. His statements that he never caught sight of Kennedy, the speed of the limousine on Elm Street was 50 miles the entire time, and his testimony that he was led to the hospital by the police car preceding him. During an interview with David Lifton conducted on November 20th, 1967, Greer was an enigma. For reasons that I can understand, Lifton said, he was under the impression that Kennedy's coffin had gone in the front door of the hospital. I'm a little vague about it, Greer said, but I'm always sure it went in the front door. It definitely did not. Also disturbing are Lifton's findings that on November 26th and 27th, 1963, FBI agents Siebert and O'Neill went to the White House to interview Greer, going so far as to record his complete physical description, including age, height, and color of eyes. It certainly was not routine for the FBI to take such information from a fellow government agent who was not a target of investigation. And Lifton poses an obvious question that why didn't Siebert and O'Neill treat Greer in this fashion? The other agents they interviewed those same days, including Kellerman and Gerald Bent, were not given this treatment, and I found something that could be a reason why they did this. Mark Lane interviewed Secret Service Agent Abraham Bolden on December 4th, 1967. Bolden, assigned to the White House detail, told Lane that an unauthorized person had used Secret Service credentials in Dealey Plaza on November 22nd, 1963, a matter widely known in the service. Accordingly, all special agents were required to surrender their identification documents for an unprecedented service-wide check on November 27th, 1963, exactly the time that Siebert and O'Neill were there getting his complete age, height, and color of eyes. So that is 90% of my paper, and like I said, as far as Greer's actions and inactions, and I think the crucial evidence is the Zapruder film. And a lot of times, and I'm going to get to my discovery in just one moment, but I'd just like to say that I was fortunate enough to obtain a really clear copy of the film. Not a lot of times you see the fuzzy ones, the ones that have just, they're like a third generation copy. And consequently, I was able to really slow this one down. So I was able to see things, and you'll see for yourself too, see things that you normally don't see. You think you've seen the Zapruder film hundreds of times, and we know what happens here, we know what happens here. But it was a double look back of Greer. It was Kellerman with the radio of his hand that corroborated his testimony, and it was some of the other suspicious shapes and things that seemed to be fantasy of other theorists that came to light. Now here's the thing that I really wish we had a TV here. I could show it to you right now, but like I said, this will be later on. I discovered something January 5th of this year, something that I never thought I'd see the day where I'd be advocating something that I always thought until this time was one of the fringe theories, kind of one of those things that's like, yeah, Peter Pan was on the grassy knoll, yeah, like this is true. There's a theory that Penn Jones Jr. has advocated for a long time, and I think Jim Garrison and a few others advocated more or less. The deal was someone in the sewer in front of the car that fired a bullet. In fact, even on Penn Jones' tours, I had this on film from 1975, he does his tour, and one of the things he does is obviously get inside the manhole. You might have seen articles, and he has spectators actually take off the manhole, get inside, and you can see from the view, and I have still photos of it, you can see from that perspective, you can actually see the car coming down. It's a very unique perspective, and this could corroborate, and there's a reason why I'm talking about this. It's going to get to my discovery. This could corroborate some of the testimony about the smoke. There was conflicting things about the smoke. People smelled smoke, saw smoke. The thing was, a lot of us critics say, well, no, it couldn't have came from the Texas School, but depository. All right, it means there was, conspiracy came from the knoll. The thing is, honestly, how could it come from the knoll too? It was too far up. But it does make sense if they smelled Senator Yarborough, Deary, Cabell, and several others smelled street-level smoke. Street-level smoke could come from that very same sewer. And so, leading to my discovery, on January 5th of this year, a friend of mine, he has a few VCRs. One of them is one that I don't think is even on the commercial market, and you'll see for yourself what he's done to this film. If you've seen Blown Up, you've seen Robert Grodin's work, and he's a pioneer in that field. But what he's done is he's been able to split screen it and quadruple screen the film. He's able to blow things up while other parts of the film are moving. And the most crucial thing is with this very clear copy, we're able to slow it down, extremely slow down the car. And without that rolling effect you get when you pause, how you pause in your standard VCRs, and you get a lot of rolling. Well, this one literally is almost like a frame-by-frame analysis going that slow. And on January 5th, when we slowed down the film, took it home that night, I saw, and this is a very controversial thing, what I'm going to say here, but I saw what appeared to be a frontal projectile coming from the trajectory, not of the grassy knoll, not of the Texas School Book Depository, but in line with the shot from the sewer. And it is only based on that discovery. Since that time, I've shown it to about a dozen people. Some people don't give a damn about any conspiracy, and they think it's all fantasy. They've seen it too, and they even said the same thing. If it's a photographic artifact, it's the cleverest thing. It's like a guided missile. It's coming. It's about the right size from that perspective. You can see it coming out. It's perfect timing. It's perfect trajectory. And the only reason I say that for last, like I said, I wish we had this here to see it right now. It's going to be shown later on formally, and basically to show you that. Obviously this is not proven. I mean, only dozen people seen it. I, quote unquote, discovered it. But this is not like the single bullet theory of the Warren Commission. If this falls down, it's not like it's going to be, the end of my research. And this was basically an accessory thing. But I would really like to see this proven or disproven. And I know about the law of physics, and I know about bullets can be captured on, regular film, 18.3 frames per second and all that. But the only thing is, sort of corroborates all this is in 1978, Larry Sturdivant of the House Select Committee, a ballistics expert, showed a 1948 black and white film of a goat being shot. You might remember some of that. I actually got the testimony from the House Select Committee. And Larry's pointing to it. It's ballistics to show about how backward shot and about trajectories and how shot from behind caused his motion and so forth. Well, anyway, he points out there's a white speck on the screen. It is, well, this is the bullet coming from the front. So when I saw that, and this was obviously came afterwards of this, That's one of several things that have helped to at least somewhat corroborate something that I still to this day find incredible, that something like this could have been captured on film. The film's slowed down very much like Larry Sturdivant's film of the goat being shot. You can see the white speck coming. It's exact type of format. You can see it coming in, and it makes its contact. So I'll leave it at that, but I just want to think that Secret Service was very lax, to put it mildly, in Dealey Plaza, and I think that Bill Greer's inactions, more than his actions, speak loudly of high treason and just conspiracy, action due inaction. And as a side event, I hope this discovery is proven or disproven.
Thank you, Vince. Before we have our discussion of this paper, I'll just tell you that the cameras here are from the local or Buffalo affiliate, NBC affiliate, Channel 2, and we're glad to have them. We're always interested in getting information out about what we're doing to the public, and so we welcome. Buck up. Again.
My reaction is the only thing, of course, that I can do. My personal reaction to this is, I'll give you the bad news first. I would like to confine my discussion to just what he thought about Greer. The other things that came in this report and are very interesting indeed. I'm sure there are about at least 25 people out there that will want to take him apart with that. So I am going to confine myself to what he says about Greer, because I feel that that is I think he's done an excellent job. The thing of putting Greer in the position and bringing Kellerman, the talk that Kellerman, the order that Kellerman gave, and getting Greer to turn twice in that 10-second period or 4-second period or whatever it is. I think that those are very important things that we should be much aware of. I certainly was not aware of them as much as some other people, because as you know, I've been pretty much involved with only shots on wounds, and the reactions of the fellows in the front of the car have not been haven't really been very interested in it. But I think that Vincent has brought out an important point, and certainly there are those who are going to say, yes, this is conspiracy, this is the result of, and you can see it, and these guys were doing this because they had in their minds that they knew it was going to happen. I can't quite go that far. I feel that if I were Bill Greer and at 54 and having had no experience, absolutely, remember, Kellerman and Greer had no experience whatsoever with any assassinations. They're not reacting the way, for instance, the drivers, the fellow that drove de Gaulle's Citroën, immediately, the first thing he did, they shot the tires out at one of the places. The first thing he did, he got out on the rims. I mean, the fellow absolutely floored it. But that man had been, I don't know how many were there to de Gaulle? 15 at least. So that these guys had experience, and when they heard anything, a snap of a twig, he might have floored it. So I'm not saying that Greer was all right or Greer was all wrong. I'm just saying that Greer did not have the experience of a conspiracy, and therefore the surprise, and I think the surprise was quite natural. I think, Vincent, if you've been there, as you pointed out, it's quite natural to turn and look back. You might have done it twice, and he might have had his foot on, and as you found out, he had his foot on the brake. That doesn't mean that the brake pedal was all the way down to the floor. It does mean that he had his foot on the brake and then while the red lights were showing. So I think I've got the limousine down to 11. The last, I plotted it and got the last 3 or 4 sequences I had was somewhere down, and I think it ends at 313. I think he was down to about 11.5 miles an hour, from 15, 17 down to around 11, and then after that, he finally gets out of there. That's true. So I feel that what we've heard this morning is excellent. It's something that we should very well be aware of. I'm not going quite so far as to condemn the Secret Service completely, because I think the element of surprise was something in here that they just didn't realize what was going to happen. That's my feeling. Now, if they had known, I wonder if those reactions were a little bit better. It would have been quite different, I think. I think you look at it that way, and you can say that Bill Greer is not all to blame. After all, he is to blame. He's not to blame for the turn. He's not to blame for the fact that they turned onto Houston and then down onto the island. It was somebody else that did that. And therefore, he suddenly, what the hell's going on? And it takes, and I've taken 4 seconds to do that, 5 seconds to do, just turn and ask yourself what's happening. So I don't feel that just during the shots, which is, I've got it up as much as 9 seconds, you can if you want to, that 9 seconds, there's 9 seconds, right there. That's not much. That's not much. And remember, we're looking at an 1/18th of a second. We can tell whether Greer's blinking his eye or not if you really want to. So each individual frame, we feel it's, you know, we can sit and look at each and compare them and say, hey, and by that time, we can use up a whole minute comparing just 2 frames. Those 2 frames are only an 1/18th of a second apart. We must remember that and not condemn. I don't think you can condemn too much on the basis of looking at the Zapruder film frames. I think you can say, there's no question, as Vincent has said, that it certainly leads towards suspicion. And I feel that he's done us a great favor in bringing Bill Greer to a point where we can say, well now, we can all say, do we agree wholeheartedly with that, or do we think that, well, is there something here? Can we actually ever say that because of Greer, that the conspiracy, the conspirators included, and these are the person before John Kennedy was killed, included the Secret Service? I'm not going to try and get into that. I'm giving it to you because I think you understand what I'm trying to say, is that it is important to try and find out who the conspirators were. I'll start by saying up at the top, I'll go with Dulles and Nixon and Hoover. And then you work it on down below, and I've got the guys down who were shooting, so I've got those fellas. Now, is Greer in the middle area here? Is Kellerman in the middle area? Don't forget that those fellas had to watch their reputations when they were interviewed by the FBI. That's always, you've got to cover something behind here. So, watch for that. I think you have to come and take the questions, Vincent.
Okay.
I like the whole operation that he did.
About 10 minutes for discussion.
I'll help you if you need help.
Now, Vincent, if anything, Greer was guilty of having slow reactions. Was he one of the agents at the Bacchanalia, the cellar door in Fort Worth the night before?
You know, it's funny because I've been trying to follow that up. I've been dying to get concrete names of the agents in the cellar, and it doesn't seem like there's any evidence. You count evidence as far as what they've, leaked
There's
out.
no list of any.
There are.
Oh, yeah. Not that I find. Actually naming names of everybody who's in the
there are
cellar.
reports that,
Where did you get this?
10, Commission 10 something, 1023.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. They're all
The interesting to check whether Greer was one of them.
I don't know whether Greer or John was one or not, I forget.
You got that looked up quite early.
But most of the detail in the limousine were participants.
Yeah, in the fall, I know the fall part in general, but I didn't know like specific names of who was in their positions.
Was Greer ever disciplined at all? By the...
Chief James Riley, if anything, it was basically shut up about it. They called the men in the cellar. As you've probably seen in David Shine's book, for example, it was a call to Jimmy Hill, I think it was basically shut up about this whole incident. It's been embarrassing for the service. The whole thing's a tragedy. And let's forget about, so there was no punishment. Chief James Raleigh did not punish him whatsoever. And obviously, if you read the Secret Service rule book, it's been, reprinted some books. That's grounds for removal of service. And especially when a president's murdered and they don't do anything about it and they're intoxicated. They were there until literally 11/22/63 in the morning.
The whole bunch of them should have been thrown out of the secret.
Yeah, but that's government.
I have one last question along these lines. Have you studied anything about Greer's subsequent career? Did he, if he was a conspirator, did he profit in any way from the action he took?
No.
Did he come in any money? Did he?
That's something that.
Have a gorgeous retirement, a la college.
The thing about him was just like the conflicting testimony. It seemed like he always presented testimony that was just like totally, he went against the senior agent in charge of what Kellerman had. But after, okay, your question is directly, what happened after November 22nd, 1963? Did he benefit? What did he do afterwards? I'll tell you frankly, I'll be honest with you, I have not found anything that says what happened to him. I know Roy Kellerman continued into the service, but as far as benefits, what happened after?
You might look into it.
Yeah, I want to. That's the major.
Can anyone respond to that?
Break of, I'm sorry, you got a question.
Yes, we retired from the Secret Service at least a year later. It's in the New York Times. I believe he was originally from Ireland.
Yeah. Originally from Ireland, right? And I know he lived in Baltimore.
Died recently too.
In 1985.
And the screw they had on him was his daughter's illness.
I'm sorry, what's that?
The screw they had on him was his daughter's illness. That's how they were able to torture him. He had a daughter with, I believe it was cerebral palsy or leukemia or I forget what. And it was quid pro quo.
Yeah, you're hitting on it here. Just real quick, I want to throw in here. This is why I'm kind of in some areas of Secret Service, like, I've done a lot of research in other areas, I'm a little lax. Just the thing is with me is, when I started out, I was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. I tried to write a book, kind of like Mars, and then I tried to cram everything in there. And now my perspective is the Secret Service, so I am going to be getting into these areas that I'm not fully.
The one thing that I read somewhere is that if the idea of a rifle shot from a building is to kill the president is because they couldn't get any closer. Now, if the Secret Service was involved, they could have done a boating accident, an airplane crash, poison, any number of things.
Well, there's even, well, I tell you what, in Europe, they're used to conspiracies, and it's obviously, even back to days of Julius Caesar, it's your bodyguards. That's the key to successful coup d'etat.
Also, if you're going to spend all the time and energy to set up Oswald in the book depository, why have a gunman on the grassy knoll? It defeats your whole purpose. So the idea is that there possibly could have been a fake attempt on Kennedy planned by
well, there's the thing about the diversionary shots and things.
Yeah.
All I know is, there's conflicting testimony.
This would explain the Secret Service because they're waiting for this theatrics.
Right. Okay.
That's why they didn't react, because of the fact that they were told that there was going to be a fake attempt which was going to make Kennedy go against the Cubans, because of the fact there was a lot of evidence that was brought to bear about Oswald's supposedly affiliation with the Cuban intelligence, which were never used, which were passed off by Sturgis and these people.
Right.
And this was, in fact, the first plan, and then actually the second plan was brought in after the first plan, which they decided to actually kill him. That's my...
There's a brief reference to this simulated business that I just discovered recently in a footnote in Farewell America, which was written in 1968. If you look up the page that refers to Gary Underhill, I don't think it's the same footnote, but it happens to be on the same page. The author or authors say that this was not a simulated assassination like Oswald thought, or something like that in a footnote. And that's 1968 that was said.
Yeah, that would be powerful. Some of the things you said, mostly
now,
during that.
if there's some accuracy to that book, maybe the Secret Service were fooled into thinking, and maybe Oswald was fooled into thinking he was participating in a simulated assassination.
That is a good thought.
I want to reinforce that, please I want to suggest to you where to go someplace. Check Colonel Prouty, if possible, talk to him personally about actual security stripping and security stripping tests. I have now what looks like evidence for 4 security stripping tests against 4 presidents, including Carter, in which people say in interviews I was told there was a test of the president's security. Now, there are two ways to look at, just for a moment, two ways to look at evidence, and that is to use what I suggest is Occam's razor, the least number of statements about the most phenomenal. But the alternative is you've got to give yourself, were they guilty or not guilty, and that's not logical. There is a third possibility, got it, that they were patsy.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm
yeah.
saying, so in a security strip, precisely what you said may have been going on. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two, Crowley will tell you, Gary and Larry Harris will talk to you about military intelligence and military reserve stripping in Dealey
that's
Plaza.
what I did for briefly there.
And you'll also find out that there was security stripping involved with the Special Services Bureau and Jack Rebel. So you have...
All balance. Not
Okay, so
saying
now
you
I'll
use it,
focus on the idea of security stripping actual, and then the imposition of a security strip test, right, which has occurred before and after, and you've got yourself a rather interesting phenomenon that is not contradicted by your film. Got it? All right.
Oh, yeah, real quick, I want to throw something else in here about the Houston, San Antonio, and obviously you can say, well, everything went according to schedule because he wasn't shot in Houston, San Antonio, you know, you're working backwards, what does that prove? Well, there's actual filmed evidence, and it's even in regular documentaries you can buy in your local video store. Get 4 Days in November, David Wolper. I just got that the other day, and you can see there's film footage, Houston, San Antonio. You won't believe the number of motorcycles that were allotted Kennedy, the speed of the car, and there's a row. It looks like almost like the golf, how many he gets. They're all down in a row. It's moving fast, and there's even clips. I don't know if it continues through the whole route in San Antonio, but there's agents on the running boards and on the handholds of Clint Hill. Okay.
I believe, you can corroborate this, that the running boards on the presidential car were able to be pulled in. And there was a story, which I cannot verify, that a girl or a child was cut, and therefore they pulled in the running boards. That meant no one could protect the president on the running boards in Dealey Plaza. I want to just add to you, take a look at this photograph as a possible photographic anomaly for your motorcycle, making that white shirt. If you label all your motorcyclists and then look at other photographs, I think you'll find that motorcyclist shows up in other photos.
See, that's an interest to me too. Oh yeah, I know, because when I gave this paper, it's literally within days of Gibbons' presentation today, there has been a few things where people have come forward and said, well, you know what, Vince, okay, there is a little explanation that, like that area in particular, that's a major one there. I don't know, I still don't see it, but I'm not, that could be valid.
Just remind me, I have that acceleration, deceleration pattern for you, down to frames. Okay? So I'll share that with you.
Oh, that'd be great.
I'd like to share a couple things. One is the bullet hole in the throat. Out of high treason, he talks about the bruise being on the bottom. Now, it took me a long time to figure out where the bullet came from. And I agree with Mr. Keller there that it wasn't Flechette Brown, but I agree with you where it came from because it couldn't go over the windshield. You have to clear the windshield in that throat. The way you do that is up higher. Now, I talked to a guy, a friend of mine from Dallas. They have paved over that manhole cover. It's no longer in existence. It's under about 8 inches of asphalt.
It's like James Pegg got hurt.
Exactly. Okay. That's the way I think, because you got an angle like this to hit him over the windshield like that, to hit him in the throat.
Right, it seems ridiculous. I mean, the sewer theory to me, like I said in my paper, not to keep not repeat the blatantly issue, but to me that sounds like a fringe idea, like sewer theory, okay, whatever. But and even if this film is, whoever proves it, I'm even giving myself an out here. I'm saying even if. I'm saying that it just appears to me that would afford projected. I think that's where the conflict has been. Grassy Knoll, Texas School Book Depository, conflicting accounts of where that smoke was and the smell of gunpowder on the street. See, people try to skirt the issue and say, well, I'll tell you what, it's not too feasible it came from the Knoll either, but that's more likely than the depository, therefore that's where it came from. I don't buy that. I think it's the smell. The manhole cover was, where the Stemmons Freeway sign is? And the umbrella? It was right down.
Limousine side.
Yeah, limousine side. Yeah, JFK side.
Unfortunately, you said past.
I'm sorry, what is it?
You said past. I
no.
wasn't going to bring it up.
Yeah, right there. That's right.
Oh, the sewer.
Yeah.
Draw it on the chalkboard.
Well,
okay, well, yeah.
The sewer was right at the bottom of the steps. Yeah.
Right, yeah, but at the bottom of the steps, where I meant Hudson was, like right down there.
Right.
What would be the distance?
Distance, what, oh my God. I don't know.
But, sewer?
Yeah, there wasn't much at all. From where Kennedy was shot in 313.
That's 30 yards.
About 30 yards, yeah.
Okay, so,
I'm sorry, we're obviously, I mean, a lot of people want to get into this, and like I say, we have the rest of the conference in mind. Yeah, Eric.
Years ago, Ken Jones was told by a newsman, I believe his name was Sam Pate, that Pate had observed smoke coming from the sewer.
Right. Motorcycle officer covered it up. There's still a moving picture where the motorcycle officer positions his motorcycle. Or I didn't want to get into that because I just don't want to appear too much in the fringe with this. I want to kind of go either way with it. But for what's worth, there is a motion picture, Thomas Atkins film. The motorcycle officer, if you can talk, is literally going out of his way to put it right in front. And there's still photos after Frank Chantarelli still photos where there's policemen in the motorcycle still congregated right there, right in front, after the crowds have all congregated. This is obviously within a half hour afterwards. So they wanted to cover it up and keep going.
Okay. Our next presentation is called Bellin's Bombshell. It should be called Gary's Bombshell, yes, because he has pursued with admirable tenacity one particular issue of evidence on a critical question about Lee Harvey Oswald's supposed trip to Mexico in the summer of '63, and the hocus pocus about there being or not being tape-recorded evidence of Oswald having visited Cuba and Soviet consulate embassies in Mexico City. Bellin's Bombshell. Oh. I just did want to say that this seems like an appropriate chance for me to express my appreciation to the work that Gary's done for the third decade in his JFK assassination file. I've said to Gary that if the journal has any real newsletter aspect to it, it's because of his column, and it's something that I'm certainly not nearly as involved with as he is in following local and following media and like late moving developments. So I want to encourage you to continue, as I know you have, to help Gary with furnishing him information to keep that as vital a column as I think it's been. So, Gary Roman.